Story 1. The Haunting of Ravenswood Cemetery. Ravenswood Cemetery stood atop a lonely hill, its wrought iron gates marking the boundary between the land of the living and the realm of the dead. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where rows of weathered tombstones bore the weight of centuries, and whispers of the past lingered in the cold, night air. Lucas, a young historian with a fascination for the macabre, had always been drawn to the mysteries of Ravenswood Cemetery. Its history was shrouded in darkness, tales of restless spirits, and unexplained phenomena whispered among the townsfolk. Determined to uncover the truth, he embarked on a research project that would lead him deep into the heart of the haunted cemetery. Lucas arrived at Ravenswood Cemetery on a cloudy afternoon, his footsteps echoing through the desolate grounds. The cemetery's entrance was framed by ancient, gnarled trees, their branches casting long, eerie shadows on the uneven path. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. As he ventured deeper into the cemetery, Lucas couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The tombstones, weathered by time and neglect, seemed to bear witness to the passage of countless souls. An eerie silence hung over the grounds, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant cawing of crows. That first night, as Lucas set up his makeshift camp among the tombstones, he couldn't ignore the creeping sensation that he was not alone. The wind whispered through the trees like a mournful requiem, and the rustling of leaves took on an otherworldly quality. Lucas spent his days meticulously documenting the tombstones, tracing the faded inscriptions and unearthing forgotten stories of the deceased. The cemetery had been the final resting place of generations, and their histories were intertwined with the land itself. Yet, as night fell, a chilling unease settled in. Lucas heard strange noises, the soft, ethereal laughter of children, the mournful wails of the wind, and the faint echo of distant footsteps that seemed to approach and recede. He dismissed them as tricks of his overactive imagination, a result of his fascination with the macabre. One evening, as Lucas sat among the tombstones, he heard a voice, a whisper that seemed to come from the very earth beneath him. It was a woman's voice, faint and distant, speaking words he couldn't quite make out. Startled, he called out, but the voice faded into the night. The inexplicable events within Ravenswood Cemetery only intensified. Lucas's nights became restless, plagued by vivid nightmares and the feeling of being watched. He noticed strange occurrences: flowers that wilted within moments of being placed on a grave, candles that flickered and died despite the absence of wind, and footsteps that echoed in the darkness. Lucas began to hear voices in the dead of night, whispers that seemed to come from all around him. They spoke of sorrow, betrayal, and a malevolent presence that dwelled within Ravenswood Cemetery. Terrified, he delved deeper into the cemetery's history, uncovering tales of a sinister cult that had once conducted dark rituals among the tombstones. One night, as he wandered through the labyrinthine paths, Lucas stumbled upon an ancient mausoleum hidden in the shadows. Its stone doors bore strange, cryptic symbols, and as he approached, the doors creaked open of their own accord. Inside, he discovered a chamber filled with eerie, candlelit altars and a sense of foreboding that sent shivers down his spine. As Lucas continued his exploration of Ravenswood Cemetery, he encountered more unexplainable phenomena. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, and ghostly apparitions appeared in the moonlit corridors. The whispers that had haunted him grew more distinct, as if a chorus of unseen voices surrounded him. He delved deeper into the history of the sinister cult, uncovering the story of Eleanor Blackwood, a woman accused of practicing dark magic and consorting with malevolent forces. It was said that her spirit still lingered within Ravenswood Cemetery, trapped by the cult's sinister rituals and the malevolent entity that bound her. Lucas's nights grew increasingly tumultuous as he struggled to understand the darkness that enveloped the cemetery. He realized that he was not alone. Eleanor's tormented spirit, and the malevolent entity that held her captive sought to draw him into their sinister world. Determined to confront the malevolent entity and free himself from the grip of Ravenswood Cemetery, Lucas ventured into the heart of the graveyard. He called out to Eleanor, acknowledging her pain and the malevolent force that bound her spirit. One fateful night, as Lucas stood before the ancient mausoleum, the malevolent presence manifested before him, an ethereal figure shrouded in darkness. It spoke through him, its voice a chilling whisper that echoed through the cemetery. It revealed its name, Mortis, and its insatiable hunger for souls. Lucas, his resolve unshaken, refused to yield to Mortis's malevolence. With a fierce determination, he challenged the entity, demanding that it release Eleanor's spirit and free Ravenswood Cemetery from its dark influence. The tombstones seemed to tremble, and the air crackled with an otherworldly energy. A battle of wills unfolded within Ravenswood Cemetery, a clash between the malevolent force of Mortis and the strength of Lucas's determination. The very ground seemed to quake, and the shadows that had haunted him retreated. With a final, defiant cry, Lucas banished Mortis from the cemetery, his voice resonating with power. The entity screamed in anguish as it was forced to release Eleanor's spirit, and the cemetery itself seemed to sigh with relief. With the malevolent force banished, Lucas emerged from Ravenswood Cemetery, his heart heavy with the weight of the past. He knew that the cemetery would forever bear the scars of its history, but perhaps, with Mortis gone, it could find a measure of redemption. As he looked back at Ravenswood Cemetery one last time, Lucas saw a faint glimmer of light within its darkened gates. It was as though the cemetery itself acknowledged his efforts and offered a silent gratitude for the release from its haunted legacy. Story 2. Whispers of the Forgotten. Nestled on the outskirts of a quiet, forgotten town, Greenwood Cemetery lay hidden beneath a canopy of ancient oaks and weeping willows. The cemetery was a relic of the past, a place where the memories of generations had been laid to rest, and the stories of their lives had faded into obscurity. Emma, an ambitious journalist with a penchant for the unexplained, had stumbled upon Greenwood Cemetery while researching local history. Its gravestones bore the names of pioneers, war heroes, and townsfolk from centuries past, their stories lost to time. Intrigued by the mysteries that shrouded the burial grounds, she embarked on a quest to unearth their secrets. Emma arrived at Greenwood Cemetery on a misty afternoon, the wrought iron gates creaking open to welcome her. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and rain, and a thick layer of fallen leaves crunched underfoot as she ventured deeper into the cemetery. The tombstones, weathered by years of neglect, stood like silent sentinels among the overgrown grass. Moss-covered angels watched over the forgotten souls, their stone wings outstretched in eternal vigil. As Emma set up her makeshift camp among the gravestones, she couldn't shake the feeling that the spirits of the past were watching her every move. That first night, as she sat by her flickering lantern, Emma heard a soft, mournful melody carried on the breeze. It was a melancholic tune, played on an instrument she couldn't quite identify. She dismissed it as a trick of the wind and the eerie ambience of the cemetery. Emma's days were spent exploring the sprawling expanse of Greenwood Cemetery, carefully documenting the inscriptions on the tombstones and deciphering the faded names and dates. Each grave held a story, but it was the whispers of the forgotten that she sought to uncover. As night descended upon the cemetery, Emma couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. Shadows danced among the gravestones, their movements unnaturally fluid. She heard strange noises, the soft rustling of leaves, the cawing of distant crows, and the echo of footsteps that seemed to approach and retreat. One evening, as she sat by the lantern, the mournful melody returned, haunting and ethereal. This time, it seemed to draw her deeper into the cemetery, leading her to a secluded corner where an ancient oak tree stood sentinel. Beneath its gnarled roots lay a weathered headstone, bearing the name Eleanor Blackwood. The inexplicable events within Greenwood Cemetery only intensified. Emma's nights became restless, plagued by vivid nightmares and the feeling of being watched. She noticed strange occurrences, the scent of roses that permeated the air, despite the absence of flowers, and the feeling of cold fingers brushing her skin. Emma began to hear voices in the dead of night, whispers that seemed to come from the very ground beneath her feet. They spoke of sorrow, betrayal, and a malevolent presence that dwelled within Greenwood Cemetery. Terrified, she delved deeper into the cemetery's history, uncovering tales of a forbidden love affair that had ended in tragedy. One night, as she wandered among the gravestones, Emma heard a soft, mournful sobbing that echoed through the cemetery. It led her to the headstone of Eleanor Blackwood, where a spectral figure knelt, her transparent form racked with grief. Emma tried to communicate with her, but the spirit remained silent, lost in her haunting sorrow. As Emma continued her exploration of Greenwood Cemetery, she encountered more unexplainable phenomena. Shadows seemed to converge and disperse at will, and ghostly apparitions appeared among the moonlit gravestones. The whispers that had haunted her grew more distinct, as if a chorus of unseen voices surrounded her. She delved deeper into the history of the forbidden love affair, uncovering the story of Jonathan Blackwood and Eleanor, a woman accused of witchcraft. It was said that their spirits still lingered within Greenwood Cemetery, bound by their tragic fate and the malevolent entity that held them captive. Emma's nights grew increasingly tumultuous as she struggled to understand the darkness that enveloped the cemetery. She realized that she was not alone. Jonathan, Eleanor, and the malevolent entity sought to draw her into their tragic story. Determined to confront the malevolent entity and free herself from the grip of Greenwood Cemetery, Emma ventured into the heart of the graveyard. She called out to Jonathan and Eleanor, acknowledging their pain and the malevolent force that bound their spirits. One fateful night, as Emma stood by Eleanor's headstone, the malevolent presence manifested before her, an ethereal figure shrouded in darkness. It spoke through her, its voice a chilling whisper that echoed through the cemetery. It revealed its name, Obsidian, and its insatiable hunger for souls. Emma, her resolve unshaken, refused to yield to Obsidian's malevolence. With a fierce determination, she challenged the entity, demanding that it release Jonathan and Eleanor's spirits and free Greenwood Cemetery from its dark influence. The ground seemed to tremble, and the shadows writhed in protest. A battle of wills unfolded within Greenwood Cemetery, a clash between the malevolent force of Obsidian and the strength of Emma's determination. The very earth seemed to quake, and the spirits of the past rallied behind her. With a final, defiant cry, Emma banished Obsidian from the cemetery, her voice resonating with power. The entity screamed in anguish as it was forced to release Jonathan and Eleanor's spirits, and Greenwood Cemetery itself seemed to sigh with relief. With the malevolent force banished, Emma emerged from Greenwood Cemetery, her heart heavy with the weight of the past. She knew that the cemetery would forever bear the scars of its history, but perhaps, with Obsidian gone, it could find a measure of redemption. As she looked back at Greenwood Cemetery one last time, Emma saw a glimmer of light among the gravestones. It was as though the forgotten souls were offering their silent gratitude for the release from their haunted legacy. Story 3. The Unseen Inheritance. Tucked away in a secluded valley, Hawthorne Manor stood as a silent sentinel of a bygone era. The mansion, with its grandeur and Gothic architecture, was an imposing presence in the otherwise tranquil countryside. When Emily, a young woman with a penchant for unraveling mysteries, inherited the estate from a distant relative she barely knew, she saw it as an opportunity to unearth the secrets hidden within its ancient walls. Emily arrived at Hawthorne Manor on a stormy evening, the rain lashing against the windows like ghostly fingers. The mansion, nestled amidst sprawling gardens, was shrouded in mist and mystery. As she crossed the threshold, the grand foyer greeted her with towering marble columns, cobweb-laden chandeliers, and the unsettling sensation of being watched. That first night, as Emily lay in her newly inherited bed, the mansion seemed to sigh with a long-forgotten history. The wind howled through the corridors, and the faint whispers of a distant melody echoed through the halls. Emily's days were spent exploring the vast estate, which included a labyrinthine hedge garden and a sprawling library filled with dusty volumes. The more she delved into Hawthorne Manor's history, the more unsettling secrets she uncovered. As night fell, the mansion's atmosphere grew more eerie. Emily heard strange noises, the creaking of floorboards, the fluttering of wings, and the faint echo of a woman's laughter. She brushed them off as the quirks of an old house, but an unsettling feeling gnawed at her. One evening, as Emily wandered through the dimly lit corridors, she stumbled upon a locked door at the end of a long hallway. The door bore no keyhole, but she could have sworn she heard soft, pleading whispers emanating from behind it. The inexplicable events within Hawthorne Manor only intensified. Emily's nights became restless, plagued by vivid nightmares and the feeling of being watched. She noticed strange occurrences, the rearrangement of furniture, the scent of roses in the air, and the sensation of icy fingers trailing down her spine. Emily began to hear voices in the dead of night, whispers that seemed to come from within the very walls. They spoke of love, betrayal, and a malevolent presence that dwelled within Hawthorne Manor. Terrified, she delved deeper into the mansion's history, uncovering tales of a tragic love affair that had ended in tragedy. One night, as she explored the mansion's extensive wine cellar, Emily heard a mournful melody, haunting and ethereal. It led her to a forgotten chamber, where a spectral figure sat at a grand piano. It was a woman in a tattered, white gown, her fingers gliding gracefully over the keys. The ghostly pianist turned to Emily, her eyes filled with sorrow, but she remained silent, lost in her haunting melody. As Emily continued her exploration of Hawthorne Manor, she encountered more unexplainable phenomena. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, and ghostly apparitions appeared in the moonlit hallways. The whispers that had haunted her grew more distinct, as if a chorus of unseen voices surrounded her. She delved deeper into the history of the tragic love affair, uncovering the story of Charlotte, a woman accused of witchcraft, and her ill-fated romance with a wealthy landowner. It was said that their spirits still lingered within Hawthorne Manor, bound by their tragic fate and the malevolent entity that held them captive. Emily's nights grew increasingly tumultuous as she struggled to understand the darkness that enveloped the mansion. She realized that she was not alone. Charlotte's tormented spirit, and the malevolent entity that held her captive, sought to draw her into their tragic story. Determined to confront the malevolent entity and free herself from the grip of Hawthorne Manor, Emily ventured into the heart of the mansion. She called out to Charlotte, acknowledging her pain and the malevolent force that bound her spirit. One fateful night, as Emily stood in the dimly lit chamber, the malevolent presence manifested before her, an ethereal figure shrouded in darkness. It spoke through her, its voice a chilling whisper that echoed through the mansion. It revealed its name, Malachi, and its insatiable hunger for souls. Emily, her resolve unshaken, refused to yield to Malachi's malevolence. With a fierce determination, she challenged the entity, demanding that it release Charlotte's spirit and free Hawthorne Manor from its dark influence. The walls seemed to tremble, and the air crackled with an otherworldly energy. A battle of wills unfolded within Hawthorne Manor, a clash between the malevolent force of Malachi and the strength of Emily's determination. The very foundation of the mansion seemed to quake, and the shadows that had haunted her retreated. With a final, defiant cry, Emily banished Malachi from Hawthorne Manor, her voice resonating with power. The entity screamed in anguish as it was forced to release Charlotte's spirit, and the mansion itself seemed to sigh with relief. With the malevolent force banished, Emily emerged from Hawthorne Manor, her heart heavy with the weight of the past. She knew that the mansion would forever bear the scars of its history, but perhaps, with Malachi gone, it could find a measure of redemption. As she looked back at Hawthorne Manor one last time, Emily saw a glimmer of light within its darkened windows. It was as though the mansion itself acknowledged her efforts and offered a silent gratitude for the release from its haunted legacy. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. See you next time.